So I wanted to make a video of this new little project I picked up. It's a Suzuki LT80. It's a 2003 model. Got it for a steal price, and just wanted to pick up something that was just fun to kind of tinker with and maybe possibly do a restoration on it. I don't know if it'll go that far, a full restoration or not. This unit, it runs and drives, but obviously, it's definitely got some wear and tear on it. It's missing most of the decals and stuff, factory decals, that is. And some things may not come through on video as far as what is wrong with it cosmetically versus mechanically. I'll try to go over some of the things that I know I've got to fix right off the bat. It does have new tires on it. They were replaced pretty soon before I got it from the previous owner. So it's got that going for it. The brakes work good on it. Like I said, it starts up and runs good. But one of the major issues right now is the guy put a new carb on it, but it's a Chinese aftermarket carburetor, and it leaks gas really bad out of the carburetor pretty much everywhere. It appears like to me it's coming out between the float bowl and where that mounts to the carburetor. Haven't narrowed it down that that's exactly it, but that's where it looks like it's coming out at. And it leaks quite a bit of gas when it's running, when the fuel petcock is in the on position. If you cut the gas off, it stops leaking, that kind of thing. But it leaks enough to where it's like when you're riding it, there's more gas leaking out of it than it's burning. So I got to fix that. So I got another carburetor that's supposed to be better quality coming in the mail here in a few days, and I'll be trying to get that put on and hopefully take care of this problem, because this particular carburetor I ordered is one that from one of the Facebook groups on these LT80s was recommended as the better quality aftermarket carb if you're going to pick one other than the Suzuki. The Mikuni one that Suzuki used as a factory carb, which is really expensive to get for these, and I don't want to spend $200 to $300 on a carburetor for a four-wheeler that didn't cost hardly that to begin with, so trying to keep things within a low budget. You can kind of see here, some things like, for instance, this air duct here, this is where the hot air comes out of the engine and is forced out of this duct here. You can see where that's kind of kinked up because this is not sitting exactly where it should be. It's kind of supposed to be more something like that, and that's a thing I know I've got to address. I've got an oil pan up under it right now to catch that gas that leaks out of the carburetor when it's running. The guy before me, he did do the oil injection delete. He kind of went about it the backwoods way, I'd call it, where he left the pump there, and it appears like it's still functioning, but basically the line leading up to the oil tank has been plugged with a bolt and the oil tank has been removed. Me personally, I would have bought the little block off plate that goes here on eBay, which is not much money at all, and just put that on there, and I'd have probably left the oil tank on there, and plugged it up with some vacuum caps or something like that if it had been me. But it has been deleted and it's converted to pre-mix, so it's running 32-to-1 mix in it right now in the regular fuel tank. Things I know he replaced on it was put a new air filter in it. Like I said, he put the new carb on it, although it appears to be not a good quality one. The new tires, the seat cover is new because the seat was torn up, he said, so he did put a new seat cover on it, so it's got that going for it. This cover up here, hood piece right here, whatever you want to call it, all the tabs are broken off up here that hold it down. Only thing holding it on are these two screws up front here, and the ignition switch with the key still works, but the key switch spins inside of this plastic housing, so I'm kind of thinking at some point I'll probably end up replacing that front hood piece, probably at some point or another. You can kind of see the plastics. They may not really appear like it on camera, that they're kind of faded from the sun. Yeah, I think it was exposed to the sun quite a bit over the years, and these two Suzuki decals here appear to be like maybe some of the only remaining factory decals on it. And you know, the frame obviously, like with the grab bar here, has got some rust and stuff where the paint's missing. The foot pegs, the rubber foot pegs are missing. I do plan on ordering a new set of those. Probably gonna fix these heel guards here. You can see there's a bolt missing, and then these screws are missing here. It's like it's held on by a zip tie on this side. And then on the other side, the screws are there for the heel guard. There is one missing down here. But you know, this one's got a little crack in it there too. So I may end up getting some new heel guards, but first, you know, I'll be getting those rubber pegs. They're supposed to go on here. It has a new petcock on it, although the guy installed it upside down. So I'm gonna have to eventually address that. Basically, when it says it's on, it's really off, and when it's off, it's really on. So it functions as it should, but it's just backwards. And he added this fuel filter in line here, which is a good thing. You know, I'll probably be keeping all that, you know, because that'll keep the trash out of the new carburetor and all. And these tires, I don't really know, they don't really have a name. They're kind of, the tread pattern is kind of like an ITP hole shot tire in a way, but they don't really have a name that I've been able to tell. But it says they're 4-ply rated. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, there were nicer ones on Marketplace, I'm not gonna lie. But you know, with that being said, I didn't have money to spend on a nicer one, because a lot of those are going, you know, for well over $1,000. So I didn't really want to spend that much right now on one. I figured I'd get one like this that was kind of a steal for several $100s, you know, and try and make a little project out of it. And a little backstory from me on why I wanted one of these. Well, I wanted one ever since I was a kid, and I had a neighbor that had one, and lived 2 houses away from me. And the one that they had was either a late 80s or like a very early 90s model LT80. And it was, I believe it was blue and white color schemed. And I would go over to their house and would hang out and play and stuff like that. And I rode on the back of that 4-wheeler as a kid. And I was always fascinated by these. You know, I growing up, you know, I was around a lot of 4-wheelers and things like that, and I never really had seen one that was designed exactly like this. And when I say that, I mean particularly the engine design. It was always a fascination to me that the engine had all this duct work on it, and it was enclosed. You didn't see the engine. You know, most 4-wheelers and motorcycles, dirt bikes, whatever back then, the cylinder head was exposed so that it could get air. And that wasn't the case with this. And as a kid, it just fascinated me how you never saw it, And of course, with it belonging to somebody else, I never had a whole lot of time to investigate it and understand how it worked and everything, and what all these different hoses and ductwork did, But it was just always a fascination to me, And then, of course, if you've been watching my channel from way back, that when I was growing up, my family, we were too poor by modern standards to afford a four-wheeler. So I spent my entire childhood wanting a four-wheeler. And there were countless people that lived around us and that I knew in school and stuff that had, four-wheelers and dirt bikes and things like that. And so, the best I could do was go over to somebody's house as a kid and ride on one. And a lot of times I was just riding on one. I wasn't allowed to drive it or anything like that, And so it's just a core nostalgic memory for me of this machine. Like I said, and the earlier LT80s were even cooler than this to me, because they were painting, back then Suzuki was painting the frame blue, which was common with a lot of their stuff. Suzuki did that. A lot of the frames were blue on their stuff. And to me, it added a little something to the machines. And I read that in 1996 through 2006, they quit doing that on the LT80s, and I guess the rest of their stuff as well. I'm sure it was a cost-cutting move. It was cheaper to paint the frames black, and like that, and all. But it took something away from them. The one that I have as a memory from a child had the blue frame, and it was, like I said, it was probably I don't remember the exact year. It was new back then, but it was probably a late 80s, early 90s model, being that it had the blue frame. And that added something to it, to me. And, if I were to do a full restoration on this one, I probably would want to paint the frame blue or have it powder-coated blue or something like that. I don't know if this one will come to that, to that full extent or not, because, I also want to be able to ride this around a little bit, and just play with it as it is, because, again, I've never owned one, wanted one as a kid, and then I wasn't able to have one, so I want to be able to experience, riding it around, even now being an adult, it seems a little foolish, but there are quite a few adults that buy these and ride around and use them as pit bikes, or whatever. So it's not totally out of the question. I mean, as long as you're having fun, that's really all that matters. But so yeah, that's the thing. It's a nostalgic core memory for me, and I've always wanted one. I've always been fascinated by them. I think the design of them, getting back to the engine being fully enclosed like that with the air-cooled fan blowing air, it sucks the air through the air box through 3 different ducts, and it's feeding the carburetor, it's feeding the fan that blows air across the cylinder head, and it's feeding air to the CVT. The CVT has its own fan on the primary clutch, which cools the clutch and the belt, and then there's an exhaust duct behind the belt that the fan on the engine sucks that hot air out of the CVT area, and all the hot air, all the exhaust air from this cooling system, and I'm getting right in front of the light here, is blown out through this duct here, and it goes up, and then it does a straight down and blows down to the ground. You can kind of see the opening of it there. Again, this is not positioned how it should be. And again, to me, it's a very genius design on Suzuki's part that they engineered it this way, because you have to think it limits somebody, especially kids and stuff, from getting burned. There's no hot air blowing on your leg or anything like that. It keeps all that away from you, and by blowing air across the engine when it's running, you're not dependent on the machine always moving at speed for it to cool the engine now. Excuse me. So that kind of stuff to me is just, I don't know, I can't say it enough. I think it was ahead of its time, you know, for this to have started in 1987 and had a production run from 87 to 2006 and it remained unchanged the entire time. I just think that it was ahead of its time when it came out, because I've not seen another youth four-wheeler design the engine and all drivetrain designed this way with a cooling system, air-cooled system like this that I'm aware of. I know the KFX80 had that, but see, the KFX80 was a joint venture between Kawasaki and Suzuki from 2003 to 2006, and it was essentially an LT80 with Kawasaki plastics and graphics on it, so there's really not, you know, it's a Suzuki LT80 is what that is, you know. That's not really any difference there, you know. But and I also know this spark arrestor purge plug is missing out the bottom here. I don't know if it's I hadn't determined yet if it's because the threads are stripped out or if it's because somebody removed it. I have heard some people saying they think that if they take that out, it makes it go faster because it can blow the exhaust out there and out of the exhaust pipe here. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say about that. I kind of thinking I'm gonna get a plug for it, but you know, like I said, right now that carburetor is the top priority, is the first fix. And I always thought this muffler was cool too, you know, it kind of snakes its way around. Expansion pipe building into a muffler, and then kind of have that little pea shooter exhaust that one the neighbor had was always blowing smoke out as a kid everywhere it went, kind of like fogging for mosquitoes. So it was always a neat thing. Like I said, it just I have memories of riding on the back of one, you know, and as a kid, and I can remember there being 2 or 3 of us on one of these as a kid at the neighbor's house, and I have to ask myself, just how small were we back then that there were 2 or 3 of us on this machine at one time. I remember one year it snowed, and there was three kids on the four-wheeler, and then they had tied a rope to the grab bar with a sled on the back, and there were 2 kids on that sled. I remember seeing that, and it's pulling all of them through the snow. I mean, you know, it wasn't obviously really super deep snow, but still, this is a 80cc, you know, and it's pulling all those kids on it at one time through the snow. I think that's pretty impressive. But yeah, like I said though, it needs some love. that's to say the least. It needs some love. I mean, you know, it's definitely not perfect by any means. Let's see if I can let the seat up here. Yeah, oh, I forgot to mention, it does have a new battery. The guy put a new battery in it, so that's a good thing. Set the seat down over here. So yeah, it's got a new battery, so it's got that going for it already. Some of the wiring's a little questionable on this. I'm not really sure what's going on. Some of this with this, I think this is a starter relay. The wires going into this connector on the back side here are just kind of loosely placed in there. And obviously somebody's been in there at some point or another messing around with stuff. I had to mess with it, but I don't really know that it's been put back in there the right way. I'm gonna try to tuck some of that down in there like that, I guess, right now. It was hanging down here, just dangling where the old oil tank, you know, the oil tank would have sat right here originally for the oil injection system. And I'm guessing the little tool kit or something probably went right in there originally. I don't know. All that's long gone too. But oh, I've got to get a vent hose for that. You know, either get the hose that tucks into there like it's supposed to be, or get one of those little stubby breathers with the anodized check valve on top. I haven't decided which way I'm gonna go for that, but I wanna put something on this so water doesn't go down through that breather hole in the cap and get in the tank. And you know, if money permits, I mean, I might get to the point where I replace all these plastics. I don't know. Currently the plastics only really have one crack in them, and that's right here. That's the only crack in the fender plastics. So it's kind of got that going for it, because a lot of them, the fenders plastics are cracked up really bad. So yeah, that's not a high priority right now. But you know, I mean, just depending, I may replace them or may try to restore them, although, you know, they do have a lot of, it's hard to see on camera, there's some deep gouges in some of the places on them, and it's very sun bleached, as I said before, which it doesn't quite maybe come across on camera, but obviously under the seat is more what the true color would be, of what it would have been more when it was new, I guess. And but I can try to see if I can start it up here. I kind of think that's the main gist of everything that I can think of right off the top. The guy told me, he said he was pretty sure his uncle had redone, at least put a new belt on it. I'm pretty sure he said it was a new belt, and he thought his uncle may have serviced the clutches or replaced the primary, secondary clutch in the CVT. But I know it seemed like he was pretty confident that his uncle had redone the belt in it. And when I rode it around, it seemed pretty responsive. It didn't seem like it was slipping or anything like that. So I kind of think that the CVT drive is in decent shape right now, so that doesn't really seem like right off that's a worry, as far as you know, it pulling. Like, it pulled me around fine. I've ridden it one time, and that was when I went to pick it up, and you know, it seemed to pull me with ease, and I was just barely giving it gas. So I don't think that is a pertinent issue right now that's going to have to be you know, I'm gonna have to dive into right away. Like I said, this carburetor thing though, that's definitely got to be, I definitely got to get that to stop leaking gas, because it's just wasting gas out onto the ground. And we all know how expensive gas is, and premix is not cheap either. So you need to conserve that and make sure you're burning it rather than just leaking it on the ground somewhere. But like I said, I think that's about everything. I know some of these vent lines, this is one of the ones that is still up. I mean, somebody's kind of tied it up there on the grab bar, but there's a few other ones that are hanging down, I think, that are part of the final drive vents that I'm gonna have to bring back up higher, you know, where they should be. I've ordered a Suzuki shop manual for it that'll be here soon, that's supposed to tell you how to fix everything on one of these, so that'll be good. I can start learning more about it and hopefully be able to, you know, take on some fixing things, you know, whenever they may arise, or the current things that I know need doing to it that I don't know about. But for what it is, for the fact that it runs, starts up and runs, and it drives, and it's not in worse shape than it already is for the price I paid for it, I guess it could be a lot worse. So you know, it is what it is, you know, as far as the shape it's in. It is technically rideable. So, but anyway, let's see if we can fire it up here and, you know, get a little sound clip of it running. I'm not going to ride it right now, because like I said about it leaking the gas out everywhere. So I'm just going to start it up, and I'm going to let it run over top of this oil pan so that the gas that comes out leaks down in that pan. this ignition switch is a little loose in this thing where it spins, so you gotta put set the choke, and I set the parking brake. I think the parking brake is already set. Yeah. You have to have that lever locked in place. It's a safety switch here. It won't start unless that's locked down. And I gotta put the gas on. All right, let's see. I might want to get on this side so that I can reach the choke. Pretty easy. Hasn't run today at all. It's just not cold out. Had it running today. I'll try to get this light on it. Might be able to see gas leaking. Leaking quite a bit of gas. See what I mean, you know. I gotta get that taken care of. Pretty good though, even with that carb leaking like that. So yeah, I just go on and cut it off. I'm not gonna rev it too much, because one thing about these, if you're not familiar with them, they're always in gear. So, you know, once you give it gas and the clutch engages, it starts pulling the back wheels. So, I'm not going with the parking brake on, and naturally it's here inside the barn. I'm not going to be giving it gas for it to be running the belt against, the parking brake, holding it back. Because, all that's going to do is just burn the belt up, stuff. But, excuse me, the next thing I'm planning to do, I'm going to start taking the plastics off of it. This has not been cleaned up or anything since I brought it back. So this is exactly how it is when I picked it up. And I'm going to take the plastics off of it. And when that carburetor comes in, I'm going to start trying to install the new carb on it, and hopefully we can get this gas leak to stop first and foremost, and then I'll probably start doing some cleanup on it, up underneath on the frame, and clean these plastics up a little bit more, the tires and everything, clean them up a little bit, and hopefully by that point I can get a riding clip in on it. That's what I'm hoping. For now, that's about as far as we're gonna get with it leaking gas. And then I want to point this out. I was speaking earlier about the earlier model, and then the one that I grew up that the neighbor had that I rode on, and really started my love for these machines a long time ago. They had the blue frame. Well, I noticed on this one, you can see where this front bumper used to be blue. Well, since this is an 03 model, it would not had the blue frame. It would have the black frame like you see it on here from the factory. The only thing I can figure, the reason that this used to be blue and it looks like somebody spray painted over it black, is that these are removable, and you could get one from another model and bolt on here, like say yours got dented in or something like that. My guess is this one came off of another one, because the one that was on here got damaged. It also looks like that at some point this one got bumped into something, and even this one is bent inward because it's supposed to be out past this front plastic nose here. So that's why I feel like that's blue, because it came off of an earlier one, and how it wound up on here, because this one would not have had the blue frame from the factory like the 95 through 87 models did. But anyway, just a little something there I noticed. I don't know if anybody picked up on the video earlier when I was walking around it, that it was that way too, but that would be why that's that way. So anyway, I guess I'm gonna wrap this video on up. I think I've pretty much covered everything. I know there's a lot of different modifications you can make. You can get pipes for them and hop them up, make them sound better and stuff like that. And you can even port the head and, just various little different things, and get some more power out of them. And, I don't know if I'll go that far with it, because good grief, a pipe for one of these is over $300. So I don't really know if I'm going to be spending that much money on a pipe for a machine like this. I think right now my main focus is to kind of get this one back to its, within reason, to its OEM glory, I guess, if you could say that, and then just kind of maybe go from there, and see if I do any kind of actual mods, hopping it up from that point. So just going to try to get it running good and maybe looking a little better, and experience what it was like when it was factory stock. So this will be my first goal. So anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned. Hopefully be some more videos, probably a video installing the new carb and things like that. Thanks for watching.